Let's move on to this story. As higher learning institutions prepare to reopen for the academic year, Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Higher Education has uncovered some challenges. From 2017 to 2024, the national student debt grew from approximately 11 billion to approximately 17 billion. It's an increase of 6 billion in those 7 years. Student debt at the Tshwane University of Technology, TUT that is, stands at 2 billion rand. 2 billion. Of the 17 billion, 2 billion, one institution. Tebogo, Letsie is the chairperson then of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education. Tebogo, thank you so much for the time and for joining us on Newzroom Afrika. We continue to try and get a lot more pupils and a lot more people into our universities, and we say that this is where you can hopefully get yourselves a better life if this is what you're choosing to do. But yet, we're struggling to even get them in because of things like debt, of things like availability then of seats for them as well, and all the overcrowding that also continues to happen. Where do we stand right now?
Well, good afternoon, Arabella, to yourself, and good afternoon to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. It is indeed true that Tshwane University of Technology is owed about 2 billion of the 17 billion, but that is not unusual if you look at the number of students that are enrolled at Tshwane University of Technology. Tshwane University of Technology is the largest contact university in Africa. So there's about 66,000 learners. So it is really not unusual for it to have that of that magnitude. To respond to your second point about access, Section 21 of the Constitution speaks about accessibility to higher education. And as you saw, there are a number of students who have not found space, even though they would have passed matric. Sorry. And that is because of the limited spaces we have. The democratic government would have built 2 new universities and increased the number of enrolling students to just over 1 million, but it is clear that now that it's not enough. I think the best possible solution now would be to look at, just like the UK is doing, just like America is doing, to look at having blended learning, those online, fully online, even on undergraduate, and those who are attending under brick and mortar.
Yeah, but Tebogo, to try and get these students into university, we're already saying they don't have the funds to do so, and a lot of them will seek some sort of funding. Then on top of that, we say to them, well, yes, maybe we'll try and give you funding and you can make an application for that, but you still have to pay 240 Rand for this registration as well. I mean, are we perhaps not thinking a little bit as we should about this? Because clearly they won't be able to then pay that 240 either.
No, that's true. I mean, that is why, as the Portfolio Committee, we have agreed with USAF. We have agreed with USAF. That is an organization that represents all universities in South Africa, with the department and the ministry, that this is something that we must discuss as a matter of urgency. It does not make sense that TUT will charge 240 Rand for prospective students, including those who are SASSA beneficiaries who come from the poorest of the poor. The University of Pretoria charges 350 Rand, for an example, to the same students, whereas University of Free State, University of Johannesburg, University of Northwest, they say they don't charge anything. That university charges 100 Rand. So it's something that we've agreed that we ought to discuss with all these universities. We must find uniformity. Northwest University, UJ, and UFS, they must tell us how are they able to do it for free, whereas others can't make it. I mean, Tshwane University of Technology, for an example, TUT, which we visited last week Friday, would have received over 600,000 applications. And if you count 600,000 applications with 240, I mean, it's a lot of money. We've asked them, what is it that they're doing with that money? Because in our view, they should then be investing it in paying for those who can't pay for themselves, in terms of bursaries, in terms of things like that. But we have agreed as the Portfolio Committee that the situation can continue as it is.
Tebogo, education is the biggest spend in South Africa's budget. Is it time for us to be building new universities? Because this overcrowding and the accommodation struggles, all of that seems to be a clear situation here, but we continue to try to press on that people should be attending universities, yet we can't handle them.
No, that is true. This government has made education an apex priority, and you have seen that in the budgeting. We continue to get the biggest budget. But it is how this budget is spent where we have a problem with it. As we speak now, in the next 2 weeks, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Honorable Enoch Godongwana, is going to give us the budget speech. We are hoping that he's going to outline how much would have been put aside for the 2 new universities that have been commissioned, which is the Ekurhuleni Science University and the Hammanskraal Detective Policing University. But that will not be enough, to respond to the challenges out there, because the demand is too high. There's a number of students who are passing with good marks, and we must create space. That is why there is a view from our side that we must look into blended learning. There must be those who are going to be funded to study online. They must be given the tools of trade, make sure that they've got connectivity in and around their areas and all of that. Yeah.
Tebogo, before you go even further though, if we're asking the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, to detail the priorities that should be set by the Higher Education Department within the Department of Education, have we not then, is there any need then for the leadership within the Higher Education Department, within the Department of Education? Because should the priorities not really be set out by the Higher Education Department itself to say, this is what we need to prioritize, this is what we're saying, and this is what we're going to get correct according to the mandate that was set out for us, of course, set by the President of the country?
No. Maybe I did not come out clear. The leadership of the department led by Minister Dr. Nkabane is clear that they asked for budget, but because of the fiscal challenges, they would submit a budget to the minister or to the Department of Treasury, and the Treasury then looks at the global picture of all departments, then decides how they are going to allocate funds. So it's not us, or it's not the department asking or hotspotting leadership from Treasury. It's the department who would have followed processes in asking for an X amount of money to do X, Y, Z things. But because of the fiscal constraint, the minister or the Minister of Finance will then decide otherwise. And you're correct. As the department, or the Department of Higher Education and Training, the minister is doing very well. That is why, we're not really happy with how some of the monies in the universities and TVET colleges are spent. We have a university, for an example, that will go and spend over 14 million rand in one financial year fighting legal cases against students and workers. It doesn't make sense. And then you don't have spaces for students, and student debt continues to rise in this country. Okay,
I fully hear you then, Tebogo. Here's my next question. Is it a case of needing more money or better management of the money you are already getting? Because maybe you don't need more money. Maybe the department doesn't actually need, but if it prioritized better and spent effectively and more efficiently, things would get done.
No, thank you. It's a little bit of both. With the money that we have, we'll not be able to build enough brick and mortar classes for an example, to accommodate more than 300,000 matriculants who pass, but will not have space to go to university now. It's not possible with the budget that we have. But it's true that the money that we have now, if managed properly, it could make a significant dent on student debt, on student accommodation problems, on classes that would be needed, or lecture room that would be needed, to accommodate those who we can accommodate currently. So it's a little bit of both. Yeah,
okay. Very interesting to kind of understand the entire situation, because I think that's That's going to be very important. So it's ultimately 2 new universities, right, with those projects that are planned to get underway this year. Is that still the case? Is that said to still be the situation? And how long will it take, do you think, ultimately to get those done? And what has government ultimately told you with regards to those 2 new universities?
The department believes that they are ready to begin with the brick and mortar of the 2. There's land available. We're awaiting to hear tomorrow what the president will say on the State of the Nation about the priorities of the year, which will reflect on the budgeting by the Minister of Finance in 2 weeks' time. So the department has done what it could, what it should. We're just waiting for those processes. But we also need to emphasize that government alone cannot resolve all this problem. We need the private sector to come in. For an example, if the Ekurhuleni Science University, they can come in as private sector. We're in the science space and say, we are willing to do a triple P with government, and we are willing to put in this much, government bringing this much, and the building of the university then does not take 5 years. It takes 2 years, for an example, to complete everything, because you have funding from both the government and the private sector. So we are calling upon private sector to get in touch with the department, to come on board, try and assist in building this country.
Yeah, so just to confirm as well, the 2 universities that are ultimately being put forward here are the University of Policing and Crime Detection in Hammanskraal, which would be in the north of Gauteng. The next one would be the University of Science and Innovation in Ekurhuleni, which is in the east then of Johannesburg as well. So that would be the 2 ultimately. Just a final word on your sense on where we stand then in terms of readiness. It's a very difficult situation in terms of accommodation that we've spoken about. Student debt being a key factor to a lot of the conversations that we're having here. Glitches that may be apparent in the systems. How ready are we to receive tertiary education students?
We are, as the portfolio committee, comfortable that we will have a smooth opening of the academic year with indeed challenges on student accommodation. We have written to the department and NSFAS to brief us on what is the problem that we're picking up on media about student accommodation providers, private student accommodation providers, who are claiming that NSFAS owes them about 44 million rands, sure, and they will not be taking students as long as they are not paid. So we are awaiting them to come back to us. But when we had a meeting with them, all stakeholders, it was all systems go.
Yeah.
We went to 2 universities and 3 colleges last
sure.
week, and we can attest that we are anticipating a smooth opening.
Okay, so we certainly hope that we get that opening and we get this situation sorted as well. Tebogo, we really appreciate you coming on to help us clear out just where we stand and the hopes and where we stand on readiness, particularly for the higher education department. Thank you so much for the time. Tebogo Letsie is the portfolio committee chairperson then on higher education.